Hello and welcome to What We're Watching. It's Katherine.
And Liz.
And Ed.
And John.
Okay, so I'll start off with I am watching, currently in progress, Will Trent.
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
I believe you reviewed that earlier when you had just started it.
I did. Okay, so this is season 2.
Nice.
It is on ABC, so also on Hulu.
Okay.
It is a detective series. I love a detective series, mostly because I love when they resolve the story. So I don't like anything
So
like
episodic, like
Yes,
each
episodic. Yeah.
episode's wrapped up.
Correct. There's obviously some big overarching stories of each season, but every episode has its own little mystery that is being solved, its own crime or whatever. It's based on a series of books by Karen Slaughter. And I, of course, immediately checked them out from the library and started listening to them. So,
So you're spoiling it for yourself?
kind of. In a TV series, they're going to have to do a lot of different stories versus a book.
Book series based on following this one character, Will Trent?
Yes. Yes, yes,
okay,
yes.
Okay. Like an Agatha Christie.
Yeah. I think there's 12 novels.
Sherlock Holmes.
Yes. There's 12 novels currently in the series.
God, I wanted a third detective.
I know. That was a good run. Hold on. Agatha Christie, Sherlock Holmes.
Hercule Poirot.
Well, see, what you're mistaking is Agatha Christie is the author of Hercule Poirot.
Yeah.
Right?
So then we need someone on top of, Murder, She Wrote.
Well, you can't say Murder, She Wrote.
Are you looking for another author?
I don't
Who
think
wrote
books are based
who
off
wrote The Firm and all those lawyer books?
John
yeah.
Grisham.
There you
Yeah,
go,
John
Grisham.
Grisham. Well, but each one is different. He didn't really do like a serialized, a whole bunch of one guy or female detective, regardless of gender. I'm just saying he didn't do like one character. He did a bunch of different, I think. I'm pretty sure.
I think we should just help the world out and say, yes, we want all John Grisham novels with Tom Cruise in them, like The Firm.
Yeah.
Just make it the same character.
Just connect them all.
But I'm going to stick with Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote.
Okay, did you just look that up?
Yes,
I
of
heard
course
some
you did.
tapping.
I mean, don't rat me out.
Tip tap, tip tap. Oh, totally Jessica Fletcher.
I'm just going to stick with that iconic detective.
Well,
All
what
right.
about Magnum PI?
All right, now we're
That's
off.
not
We're
a-
off.
okay, all right.
Will Trent.
Okay, Will Trent. It's set in Atlanta, and he was a foster kid, and one of his main best friends is also on the force. He is a GBI, so Georgia Bureau of Investigations.
I mean, we all know that.
It's
what
such a
that
waste of time when they're dealing with like, oh, it's this department. It's like, you're a detective, not a detective. That's all I need to know.
Yeah. Okay, I hear you.
He's in the BBFFBI, the Best Friends Bureau of Investigation. What?
His friend is a homicide detective, so that's an interesting relationship. He might have a weird father thing going on who also might be a serial killer, but we're not sure if that was his father, but that's kind of being dealt with more this season 2. Yeah, it's good. I really like it.
backstory.
Yeah. So Ramon Rodriguez is the main character, Will Trent. Oh, I'm going to use my least favorite word in the world.
Oh,
Just don't say it.
I want to know what it is.
What? I'm getting.
Oh,
The
I know where
titular
we're going.
character.
How dare you, Ed?
Ed, you can't.
If you can't steal my titular,
Ew, it is awful.
it's the worst word ever. Okay, so titular meaning the title character.
Which you could have just said.
I know. Why don't people just say that? Why do they have to say titular all the
Who's saying
time?
it?
I don't know. I hear it a lot.
I never hear it. Do you,
It's
John?
only because you don't like it that it sticks out to you.
It's horrible. It's the worst.
I think that the first time I ever heard it was you saying titular.
Well, I hear it a lot, and I'm also very like.
I'm not going to say what if you just said the word to me and like said like Liz, what do you think that means?
Well, don't answer that.
Torture. Like
I just stepped on what you said, which might have been a good thing.
okay, yeah. Sorry if you didn't hear it. Then we're just
Which is better. Better that you didn't hear what she said she thought titular might mean.
Right.
Okay. All right.
It's not a show on the Playboy channel?
I mean, really?
Titular. Oh, sorry, that's a different show.
No. Yikes. Okay. So enough with titular. So
Wait a minute, though. Do you realize Ramon Rodriguez was in The Affair, one of your favorite shows, Elizabeth?
yes. And he was an undesirable or complicated character in it. And ultimately, it would be a spoiler alert if I gave too much away what his character is. Because if you haven't watched The Affair, which was on Showtime, right? I think you can go back and watch it. I think I blocked him out from that.
Oh, okay.
Well, it was only 5 episodes, so it wasn't like he was in the whole show.
But you know what? He was titular because it was very impactful, his role, actually.
Was he one of the affairs in the affair? Okay, we won't say.
I can't say.
Okay. All right. So he's great in this. I was about to move on to his friend character, but I do have to say this one last thing about his character. He is dyslexic. I am dyslexic. So that, to me, is a really cool element of his character. He likes to take all of his notes via a little audio recorder, which is also like, why isn't he just using his phone? But whatever. I just like that layer of complication because it's like, oh, how would you go about this if this is a challenge for you? So back to his best friend. His best friend is played by Erica Christensen, who is fantastic.
Good for her.
Yeah, she's great in it. She's very complicated. She's got a lot going on.
She was in Parenthood.
Yes, she was in Parenthood, correct. And then it's filled out with a nice range of other characters around him. He has a partner who is great, and then the head of the GBI, who's a great character. Uh-oh, what?
Georgia Bureau of
I know.
Investigation.
Well, what you didn't say, and this is why
what?
they always do this, is because it's like cross law enforcement issues.
Yes.
Because it's this GBI, which is a state thing, versus Atlanta, like a city police department, which is, I think maybe, it's not that we don't experience that in California, but I don't know that we think about it as much as other places. Like you hear in like an East Coast movie or something, it's like, oh, the Stadies. And you're like, what? Who cares?
Yeah.
Aren't they just cops? I don't get it.
Yeah.
So, but that's why this is an issue.
Well, also, you realize, like, oh, well, then the FBI, which would be federal, which is across all the states, it's that whole weird jurisdictional thing that,
a
like,
Law and Order comes up, and I really like when someone comes in and throws their jurisdiction dick around, claiming where they need to be.
Their stick? Okay.
Yeah, it's like a big, like, oh no,
It's
they're
like a
here.
pissing contest of jurisdictions.
Jurisdictions.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, that would be where I'm at with that. It's currently airing. It's on ABC. It's really good. I mean, it's a great detective series. So, there's a lot of shows that are detective series, but this is a good one, and I am enjoying it. So that is one of the things I'm watching. I'm also watching, currently in progress, but not for much longer, Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Same here. Finale season.
Well, so he says.
Maybe.
Yeah.
He's done this before to us.
He seems to be really saying that he's done.
But I was going to say, he came back and doesn't really seem to have missed a step. So he could be right back doing a few more seasons, in my opinion.
I do love a wide shot where you really get to see his walk, the lean and the like. I mean,
know.
it's so great.
I
Yeah.
will say I think that walk has evolved, but yeah.
He's a little more jaunty. He's a little more, feeds into it. And I don't know if he's wearing some partially orthopedic shoes now due to age. I don't know what's happening.
They got a little spring in them, maybe?
Yeah, I always say the absurdity in some elements has gone a little too high for me.
Okay, I will admit
Yes.
that this past season, when it first started, I was not going to watch it.
Oh.
And my husband and John were watching, and I was like, I don't know if I can handle the level of uncomfortable humor that happens. It's
Fish dead?
I mean, it's so cringy. It's
Fish
like,
stuck.
oh God, it's all. I have a problem. So I'm like, I waffle on whether or not I like it sometimes, because sometimes I'm like, this is the worst to watch. Like, I'm like, oh, my whole body is like cringing right now, just even thinking about some of it. And yet it is very funny. So it's difficult.
Those moments are challenging. For me, they don't always pay off the best. I mean, like, it was worth it this season to get Sienna Miller doing what she did. I feel like
Sienna Miller.
Yeah,
that was great.
kind of not the first part of where she was, but then that final on-set thing was fairly amazing.
Yeah.
And JB Smoove, who plays Leon Black.
Oh, he is hilarious. That's a great character.
And to think most of it is improvised.
Well, the idea being that they usually start off with a skeleton or an outline of what they are going to do for a scene, and then they are just like riffing and just, it's kind of amazing the way they make the show.
Yeah.
I do like that it's a weird combination of people playing versions of themselves,
Right.
and then people
Like Vince
playing.
Vaughn.
He's not playing himself.
But it is Vince Vaughn, but
Yeah.
it's not Vince Vaughn.
It's Freddie Funkhauser. I
Yeah.
don't know what you're talking about.
Right. So it's that combination of Larry is playing a version of himself, Ted Danson, fantastic, playing a version of himself, and then somebody like Vince Vaughn playing a character who, has Vince Vaughn qualities, but has a different name and is definitely living a different life. And, it's an interesting.
Richard Lewis.
Oh, gosh. So sad that we lost Richard
here's
Lewis.
the deal. He had been on previous seasons. This season, not a spoiler alert because God rest his soul, Richard Lewis has passed away. He did not look well.
Oh, no,
and
he did not.
I don't know if they're going to address it at all, any way, shape, or form. But it was so noticeable at the beginning of the season. It felt like, how can you not say something? I don't know. Because it hasn't, I think he might have filmed the entire season.
Yeah, I think it was all filmed and then he passed away.
Right.
It was very noticeable, and even to the point where I remember watching a scene where they were on the golf course and he never got out of the golf cart. And I was like, oh, because if you're shooting this and he's frail and low energy and you just do the scene with him in the cart. That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I know. That's that's sad.
So on another topic.
Yeah.
Susie.
Oh, gosh.
His manager, Jeff Green's wife.
Right. So that's played by Jeff Garland. I like how there's a lot of
manager. Yes, but I was talking about Susie, who is
right. I just want to say a lot of the first names are the same.
Yes.
So it's like Susie Essman plays Susie Green.
Cheryl David plays Cheryl Hines.
I know,
played by Cheryl Hines.
It's funny. So I was just saying that Jeff Green is played by Jeff Garland, and that made me think of the first name. So go on. You were saying about Susie.
Her outfits are utterly, I don't know on what reality,
Have they gotten more ridiculous? Yeah.
Because here's the deal.
This season they've been insane.
Because, a wife of a prestigious manager living in Bel Air, some of these outfits, I'm like, no. They're really border on costumey.
They're caricature-ish. Yeah.
They're so hideous. I love her.
She's hysterical.
Oh, John,
what?
you think those
what?
Look, some people look crazy. I don't know what to tell you.
They're living that red carpet life where every outfit is a full-blown one-off. You're like, okay.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
And this last episode, every episode there's a moment where I'm like, I think he took a little too far, or that's just kind of unbelievable. Mm-hmm. He'll do these things where it's like, oh, and the person will be like, oh, and they're like, it's like 2 minutes of, oh, and you're like, we got it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I'm like, I get what Larry's doing. It goes past the point where you're like, huh, okay.
Well, there's not a subtleness anymore.
No.
I think in the beginning it was a little more, they would be subtle about let the joke land and then move on. Now they're really punching it.
Look, I think these are some of the things that have become the trademarks. That doesn't mean everybody likes them.
Yeah.
Because I can agree that sometimes those go on too long, but it's like, that's the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I think they've just become a little too absurd recently. But then he'll have some one-liner throwaways that are so genius.
Yeah. Well,
and so on point for his character. This last week's episode where he's basically going to become a guardian if this man passed away to a daughter. Some of those lines were so absurd. And the woman that played opposite of him, she's probably just for this episode, the way she just didn't acknowledge and would bridge or pivot his answer to it's okay was so brilliant. So there's just moments like that I love. But, I'm going to be sad if this is the last season.
Yeah.
Because I've watched every season, every episode. And he was definitely one of those people that came out of, I don't say nowhere for me, but I didn't know his background in relationship to Seinfeld and even Saturday Night Live, that he's one of those people who's always behind the camera really for the most part, and came out and did this pilot for HBO that took off. I don't think I knew who he was until then. And then you almost were like, the first episode, you're like, is this for real? Is this?
Yeah.
And I guess for the most part, this is very close to who Larry David is. So,
I guess that's part of the joke, that this is really true to his character.
The
in
ultimate curmudgeon. Really.
Yeah. I want to just shout out Tracy Ullman. What the hell? That whole storyline was hysterical.
It started last season and carried into this one.
And just the worst relationship ever. And just she was horrible and he didn't want to be with her. And then he couldn't leave because she was just getting sober. That whole thing was hysterical.
I really think, those two, that being Larry's girlfriend, and then Freddie having his girlfriend that they both did whatever they called that disease they made up.
Oh my God, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They, pretended as if they were going to come back for their, comeuppance, which I need. So we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, so we haven't gotten the
You mean
finale
a
yet.
girlfriend that worked at Disney?
Yeah, worked at Disney.
I worked at Disney.
Well, the other storyline, of course, that, is not just this season, it was last season as well, is the real Larry David show, Little Larry or whatever it's called. And then the actress who is now like a big star from the show, she's like a breakout. Oh my God. I don't have it in front of me, that actress's name. She is hysterical. I do really enjoy her.
I don't know if I'm getting it right, but Keila Monterosa Mija.
She's amazing. She deserves a big shout out. Mm-hmm. This idea that she was so terrible and so good at being terrible, for us as an audience, it's been hysterical. And then for her to take off within this show that she's a big star and everyone loves her. Genius. I just love it. And he's so annoyed about it. It's so great.
I mean, we're even forgetting where it came. I can't even. What happened in the restaurant? That was how the manager was like, "What about my daughter?"
But I thought it had something to do with the pool. Didn't it have something to do with falling in the pool and not suing or something? No?
Was that like his brother and the brother
yes.
died?
Oh my God, it was.
I'm not going to sue you if you give my daughter this role.
I think that is what
crazy.
it is. Okay, so anyway, Curb Your Enthusiasm, almost done, supposedly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really enjoying it begrudgingly, which I think is appropriate, that I'm begrudgingly enjoying the show about Larry David begrudgingly living in the world amongst people, even though he doesn't like people at all, which was a very funny line that he had. It was something like that, wasn't it? It was pretty good.
Yeah, when he got hired to go to that party. But then, I don't know, for some reason I just went to this other recent episode of him doing, the Gettysburg Address in the bathroom constantly.
But then it became a trigger. If he heard it, he basically had to pee.
Oh, what was that running joke about spoiling the Wordle, too? That was great. Because my daughter does Wordle, and of course, anybody who does Wordle would, lose their mind if you just blurted out the Wordle word to them.
See, that was I think on the verge. It wasn't like a real storyline. It was like did they even go back to it a second time? It was a one-off.
It came up at least 4 times in the episode, but they never said sort of what it was. They just kind of would and by the way, and they'd say the word, and that person would be like, "How dare you?" And that was it.
Okay,
or whatever.
fine.
I'm pretty sure.
No, it did. It had a full little mini arc.
A full arc. Okay, so those are my 2 shows for this week. So it's Will Trent and Curb Your Enthusiasm. Okay. Liz, you want to go?
Yeah, I have 2 movies. The
Movies.
first one is Spaceman.
Oh, I watched Spaceman too.
It's a new film on Netflix starring Adam Sandler.
Yes.
And really just primarily him.
Yes.
It's so he plays a Czech astronaut, Jakob.
I thought it was Jakob.
Jakob.
Isn't that what they say? I don't know.
Yeah.
I have not seen it. I love Adam Sandler, but I haven't watched it.
I think it is Jakob.
Yeah.
So he's been assigned to spend 6 months in space to go up to investigate a mysterious cloud of dust particles called Chopra that's basically just hung around. So what the hell's happening?
Yeah, it's interesting because the setup of it is that you can see this cloud from Earth. So
Right.
it's, it's
ominous.
Yeah. It's,
What's going on there?
what is that?
And I will say, why did he have to be alone? I don't know. I mean, couldn't you send more people up there? And South Korea was on our tail, so it was a big deal for them to get there. And it is based on a novel called Spaceman of Bohemia by Yaroslav Karvar. I think his name is Russian. So, and then it was directed by Jan Renick. So
These are some challenging names, I would say.
it's a very small, precise cast because really it's highly focused on Adam's experience in space and the overall theme of loneliness because he leaves his pregnant wife, played by Carey Mulligan, mostly in memories, because although you can tape video messages to him, and which he does.
And there's an interesting, communication device that they're using.
Right.
Part of it, like almost like a pod that she can sit in, and they can have sort of a FaceTime chat.
Right.
Can you fix the delay? Can you fix the delay?
Apparently, you can fix the delay. I mean, this is not necessarily like
It's
a
sci-fi,
Yeah,
Eddie.
it's
Come on.
not
I'm making
current technology. What?
It's from Avenue 5
Oh, Avenue 5, absolutely hysterical.
and not coming back.
I know, sad. Avenue 5. It was really good.
So,
Okay, sorry, go on.
His commander here on Earth, played by Isabella Rossellini.
Oh, God, she's so good.
This is a little bit of a spoiler, but she intercepts a message from his wife. You know, she's pregnant here on Earth, that she's not happy. Now, his mental health while up there is very precarious and very monitored because, you know, he's solo. So she opts not to send him her message.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So in some ways that sends him into more of a sort of depression and isolation until, and this was really, at first you're like, is he hallucinating this?
Yeah.
A creature sort of appears in his spaceship, and it's like a very large looking like tarantula. So if you have any arachnophobia, you would be
Oh, yeah, you can't watch this movie.
done.
No, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a big old looking, like I said, like a tarantula.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
A little extra arm dexterousness that's going on, but other than
and
that.
it's obviously extraterrestrial because it's able to communicate with him. And so at first he really is like, am I hallucinating? Mm-hmm. But there's issues with the ship, and the creature screws around with it. So then it's like he kind of is like, okay, you are real. And because of this loneliness, it's like he actually starts to befriend and communicate Anus.
Yeah, he names him.
And he helps navigate his way to the cloud, and they become friends. And it was so unorthodox and so sort of odd. There really were moments like, is he just hallucinating this thing? Like, why isn't anybody down on Earth seeing this?
Well, conveniently, as happens with a lot of things
Yes.
like this, the cameras were not working and he was having technical issues in his space station. So they couldn't see anything that was going on. And I think at some point they lost communication. They couldn't hear what was going on. I don't know, something.
So,
well, just to interject a teeny bit, Paul Dano is the voice of this extraterrestrial spider creature thing.
Right.
It is interesting because I couldn't tell how they shot it, if he was there, and then because
do you
the
mean?
spider does have a mouth, which is a little weird. Did you notice that?
yeah.
So you're
It's
like,
more like tinctures or like,
yeah, little, like, yeah. So, because sometimes if it's just a voice and it's going to be a CGI character, you're just recording it afterwards. But maybe he was there. I don't know.
You
What?
think the Jim Henson Puppet Company was there and they were all just rocking it out on set?
No, I mean,
in space?
Did Adam have like a visor on so it could be like a spider filter?
oh Lord. What? I would 100% think it was a voiceover, like put in later.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and the spider or the extraterrestrial creature is its own study in loneliness because his species has basically been wiped out. And so his attachment and sort of these philosophical discussions that he has with Adam Sandler's character have a depth because of him feeling like he's the last of a species. And it's sad. It actually truly affected me by the end because the story of this extraterrestrial, you know, first being a very intimidating, terrifying creature, and the arc of really where he became his friend and was so caring, and what happens to him, and then how much Jakob cares for him.
Yeah.
Basically risks his own life. And then he realizes that, you know, I am projecting myself into space to maybe run away from my promise back on Earth, but I really do want to face him and make this work with my wife. So it was had much more depth. There is little or no humor in it. So if you are an Adam Sandler fan thinking like, there'll be a
No.
Spaceman. No.
No, it's not that.
It's one of those serious turns that Adam Sandler likes to do occasionally, and he is good at it. Of course, he's very exhausted looking, and it's like, you know,
Yes.
he's very put upon. So it's, you know, it's in his wheelhouse of that type of character. So
For sure. He does a great job. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very interesting that he can do, you know, Waterboy to this. Like,
Right.
you know, he's got a big range. I mean, Waterboy is a weird old reference, but
Speaking of, I was going to say, is there at least a golf swing moment anywhere?
No,
like a recreational 5 seconds of no.
This is
No
not
Happy
one
Gilmore?
of, and I think I got confused because I thought initially, oh, this is going to be one of those Netflix movie deals that he has. They're going to be in that type of wheelhouse where it's that broad, high comedy type of movie. And it's
Halloween
not.
hubby.
Yeah, exactly, which I actually did enjoy during Halloween. But he didn't write this. He didn't direct it. He just got to be starring in it. He's not even listed as one of the producers, although Channing Tatum is.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So, yeah, he just was in the role of an actor. And so I do recommend it. It's very unique.
I would recommend it as well.
Yeah.
I liked it. But yes, it was kind of sad and moving. And the main thing I wanted to say about it was visually, I think because it was memory stuff, they did a lot of really interesting things, particularly with all the stuff with Carey Mulligan when he was thinking about her or memory. Like all of that had a real interesting quality, which, you know, I appreciated.
And then when they, you know, and also it's always, you know, how do you make something interesting where you're just in a small contained spaceship? They did.
Yeah.
And then when they get to the cloud, that is an interesting sort of revelation of what it could be. So it's, you know, don't worry, it's not a device of destruction. And that's all I'll tell you. So I then watched the movie All of Us Strangers because I love Andrew Scott from Fleabag. And I was like, oh, and I'd heard a little buzz about it. It profoundly affected me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, so it is also a movie about extreme loneliness. And it's also a romantic fantasy and a very unorthodox ghost story.
Oh, okay.
So it's really about the writer, Andrew Scott, living in, it looks like London. It's a very secluded life in London, very, you know, private. And he's a screenwriter and he's working on something. And the pace of it in the beginning is very, I don't want to say slow. It's very intimate, very quiet, not a lot of dialogue. And you're sort of like, where is this going? Like, what is, you know, you have to stick with it. He meets one of his neighbors in this large, like, building and turns down having a drink with him that night. So, okay. And he decides to go back to his childhood home, which is in one of the suburbs of London. And the house is abandoned or at this point empty. And he goes in and he basically, you realize, he's having a experience and you don't really know if this is real or not and whether you believe are ghosts or not. It's his parents.
Oh,
And
okay.
they are of the age, and I mean, the parents are played by Jamie Bell and Claire Foy. So
Wow.
fabulous. And they are of an age, it looks almost the same as him. So
Yeah.
immediately you are like,
What's happening?
askew here? And it's him going back because as a 12-year-old boy, they were killed in a car accident.
Oh.
So we assume the screenplay he's writing is about them or their unfinished issues. Of course, how could there not be? And I mean, it's so, like all of us in this room have had, you know, premature deaths in our lives of really important people in our lives. It really hits you of just like, how would you handle something like this? Even if it was just in your brain, but it was so real to you that you were interacting with your parents in like real time and asking questions. And they're like, we missed you. Like, what are you up to now? Like, it's so touching. So he has this really beautiful interaction with them, but by no means do you feel like it's done. And he goes back to his apartment at that point. And this time when he sees the neighbor, Harry, played by Paul Mescal, they're both British actors. He like, let's have a drink together. Because he's just had this, like I said, this unique experience that he's sort of like, he doesn't really tell him anything about it. And they start a love affair at this point. That it's the parallel storyline. And if you're homophobic, maybe this movie's not for you, and F you, but it's like, you know, that's the love story throughout it, right? And throughout this, he continues to go back to the home and have one interaction just with his mom where he does tell her that he's gay. And she isn't immediately accepting because of the era that she died in. She's like, people are so mean to you. Is this accepted now? I mean, she has a harder hurdle to kind of overcome and accept. And so that was a very challenging conversation with just her. And then he goes back, you know, to his apartment and the love story with Harry is developing and he's kind of coming out of his shell and they're going to clubs together and partying and having these great experiences together. Then he goes back and it's just his father. And the father experience is more accepting because he's like, I knew.
Oh.
And then he's like, well, if you knew I was being so bullied as a child, why didn't you help me? So there's forgiveness for both parents for their shortcomings because as you grow as an adult, you realize if you do the work, like no parent is perfect. They inevitably, quote unquote, fail you, but that is life because they're human and flawed. And therefore, can you come to a place of forgiveness and just move on from it because that's who they are? You know, it's impossible to be a perfect parent. So,
Well, that's not true. We got Mary Kilmont. She's great.
Our mom is perfect in
Yikes.
every way.
I honestly, we do another podcast where we do interviews with our mother. To be a mother of 8 children, you could never be stretched that thin and be like, quote unquote, a perfect parent. You literally, physically, that would be impossible. So as an adult, you realize exactly that. You realize I was number 4. There are 4 kids after me that needed her undivided attention at particular times. So it's impossible.
It's the classic doing the best they can.
Yeah. So during this process, he's also writing, the love affair is developing, and the soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. And it's more of the era, I think, of his childhood at 12. And he has a Christmas evening, once again, ghost interaction with them. That's where I went oh God. It was so good. And it was so touching, and it was all the things you'd want it to be. And like I said, he's a grown male, basically looking equivalent to their age, and how they're interacting with them is your child's always your child.
Yeah.
And as a mom, that really started to resonate with me. You always will look at them in some ways and see the small child in them.
Oh, yeah.
So he goes back and he wants his now lover to I want you to meet them. And that is I don't want to do a spoiler alert. There's a very interesting development that comes with that. And it's well worth watching.
Yeah, leave it there because I
will.
am so intrigued.
I will leave it there.
But it also sounds like be in the right mood and ready for that. So I'm glad to have the warning that's
and just
what
watch
it is.
it all the way through. It, like I said, it profoundly affected me because it's the story of isolation, loneliness, grief.
Yeah.
And those unchecked conversations and, wanting to be seen, wanting to be known. Beautifully acted. It was directed by Andrew Hay and written by him as well. It's based off a book called Strangers by Takashi Yamada. I really highly recommend it. It won or was nominated for several BAFTAs and a National Board of Review as well, of the top 10 independent films of 2023. I really don't know why it got no love or recognition. Maybe because it was a small independent film and to do that Oscar push just was more difficult. But it really is a beautiful film distributed by Searchlight Pictures, and I highly recommend it.
I just wanted to chime in and say Paul Mescal, he was in Normal People, and he was so good. That was an amazing series.
Like I said, no spoilers, but he, in a way, will break your heart.
He's amazing, and I am looking forward to seeing this. I will say I did see a lot of press with the two of them, and they were hysterical in press. They were their chemistry of just being friends and having fun which is very not what the tone of this movie is, but amazing to see the two of them together. So even that, you're okay, these two.
It's an excellent, very small, tight cast. I mean, everybody sort of brought their subtlety A game. Is the best way to put it. Yeah.
Okay, well, I definitely am putting it on my watch list.
I'll go. I actually have a couple things that I wanted to get out of the way because unlike maybe everybody else, I do make time for our own recommendations. So,
what do you mean? We all make time for other.
It's hard.
We don't bring it up that much,
I know.
though.
It's
but
hard because often we're trying to watch something new and not have crossover. But speaking of the tough stories and going through loss, I watched Good Grief, which Liz recommended on a previous podcast with Dan Levy, and it was a lot lighter than the one that you just described.
Yeah.
But also a good other kind of side of grief, which is sometimes it can piss you off to find out what actually happened, and then you got to deal with that. So I enjoyed that, and this is just another shout out that if you didn't catch Liz's review, I also recommend it.
Yeah, I recommended it when we talked about it. Now, the only question I have is, it didn't bother me that it was a Christmas sort of themed or centered timeline. It didn't bother me at all. How did you feel about it out of the Christmas season watching it?
It was fine. Again, if it's not majorly about the holiday, then you can get a lot out of a movie that was kind of set at that time. Just like Genie was a lot of fun to watch, but it's at Christmas. About Christmas. Speaking of, and I didn't even think that I was going to bring this up, I totally went back and watched the original that Genie was based off of, written by the same author, and starring Alan Cumming in the original character role.
What?
Like, he comes back as the owner of the art thing and a real jerk, but he's the main character of the first one. It's horrendous. It's from the 90s. Don't watch it. But watching Alan Cumming essentially doing all of those bits and beats all over again, that he was like the put upon salesperson and et cetera. It was a lot of fun to go back and watch that. But I was like, this is based on something original. Oh, the writer wrote this. Let me go watch it. Woo! I didn't think I was getting an Alan Cumming version of it, but here we are.
Isn't that funny, the evolution of things, that things can be redone and interesting.
Come back and have a whole nother round
Whole
of
nother life.
And then you pull the actor back up from like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So
What, John? What?
Well, it's both versions are Richard Curtis.
Yes.
Very famous and important filmmaker.
Yes.
Love Actually.
Yeah, correct. The first one was called Bernard and the Genie.
Yeah.
In case
So
you need to know.
the character Bernard in the new one, it was played by Alan Cumming in the first one. So
Okay.
Oh, and there's frequent collaborator Rowan Atkinson is in there.
yes, he
Oh.
is. Yes, he is. He plays the nasty person in this, whereas
But does
Alan
he-
Cumming plays the mean person.
And he speaks?
Of course, he speaks.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to Mr. Bean never speaking.
I was going to say, I keep forgetting that Melissa McCarthy is the genie and not the person who finds the genie.
Right.
Was the genie female in this original as well? No.
it
Okay.
was not.
All right. Just I wondered how similar it was. But Melissa McCarthy brings her own thing to things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then another rehash of somebody else's something that they brought was, Katherine, you reviewed Lift, and I went and watched it myself, and it surely wasn't a comedy. It was a heist movie.
100% heist movie. Yeah.
Maybe not as fully formed as the 10 movie Fast and the Furious crime scenario, criminal family situation. So they didn't totally have everything locked in as far as I was concerned, but it was still a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Vincent D'Onofrio as not an alien, always enjoyable.
Oh, wait, was that a
Men in Black
reference?
Of course.
Or trying to solve a crime? Would that be Law and Order? Oh, not Special Victims. It's Law and Order.
Was it Criminal Intent?
Yes, yes. Okay. With his
you-
notebook. Yeah, I love Vincent
And he
D'Onofrio.
always
Yeah.
like
A little side.
turn
a
like
side.
when he's gonna do like when
Well-
he's gonna do an investigation, or actually when he really had to interrogate somebody, would be like,
As long as he's not like, as long as he's not hanging from the ceiling like the sun.
Oh.
okay.
Anyways, enjoyed it. And I also recommend Lift. But the last repeat that I brought up was I did a double feature and watched both Aquaman.
What? Oh, okay.
I wanted to make sure that I really had a solid opinion about the second one, and they maintained a lot of the same look and flavor, which I didn't necessarily enjoy in the DC universe. They do a lot of video game style camera moves, which can kick me out of the scene, so it's hard for me to watch sometimes. And I'm like, oh, right, the underwater, they did it even more.
Oh.
Because now you're not just waiting for someone who's fast or who can fly. Now everybody has the spin camera move. Oh, right. I'm getting a little ill. But I watched the second one with full knowledge that I was going into that, and ended up really finding Patrick Wilson's character like the best part. Because like you already know what you're getting with Jason Momoa and his character, and he's like, begrudgingly the Aquaman. He just want to do it. I don't want to be the king. Fine, whatever. I love that. That's great. You stayed on target. But I was not expecting how much Patrick Wilson showed up. And he was really irritating in the first one, and get him out of the way. And the second one, he's not. He's like helpful, but in like the most like side character, not main character, no real like ambition to really help. It was a lot of fun. And then
Nice.
if you watch, like I do, all the way through the credits,
Oh, uh-huh.
there's a scene, and he gets his hamburger and cheeseburger.
Yep.
It's really, really worth watching. Just his character arc.
I don't know if you can mention that because then what he does to the hamburger.
I'm not going to mention that. I mean, it's a little. It's like a bacon crumblies on it, kind of protein, maybe.
I just recently watched it too, not number 1 and 2 back to back, just 2 solo. And yeah, I mean, Jason Momoa is Aquaman. He carries the whole thing, really. So, although the Atlanteans and all that stuff, you're like, what is happening? Why are we at war? What's this evil thing coming up? Why? But I also love the character of the scientist, who's like his whole goal is to just prove that the Atlanteans exist and the science or the so
Yeah, Randall Park is pretty fun, and he's
Yeah.
great in the Marvel universe as well. So
Yeah.
we like him in all of the
Yeah,
universes.
Randall Park is hilarious. He's great.
Ultimately, I think the only negative thing that I want to say about this is not all of the CGI. just the water hair. It
What?
really got me.
It's
it's like sometimes they had it, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes it was moving like, a fish in a fish tank, but they're going not 17 underwater. And you're like, is it still just, you guys are talking. And no, it's fine. So don't be distracted by whoever had that job of doing animated wavy hair.
I mean, I hate to say, if I was living underwater, I would have my hair like in a braid.
Sometimes they do.
What if it's like gonna float in your face?
That's what I'm saying. Sometimes they do.
No.
And then in the next scene, it's undone because they got in a fight. And then it's back. I'm like, well, I need to see him do his braids then because I don't know how that happened. Someone's doing your hair,
when he
sir.
bangs the big
Trident.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm the one who.
that hair is part of the whole whipping. The whole thing comes together.
Long hair is fine. I'm saying there's a bunch of short-haired people that's like,
Yeah, Patrick Wilson's character at sometimes is a little weird underwater.
it's like almost its own character. I would have actually apprieted if they just
I mean, that must have been so much work too, animating that hair.
a zoomed-in version of Aquaman that's just the moving hair of everything.
I think that's your graphic background.
Yeah, 100%.
Because for me as a viewer, a lot of it looks super weird. So
That's what
you're
I'm saying. So like sometimes
whatever.
something really like I don't buy it. I'm like, well, now all I can do is focus on is his hair weird? Is their hair weird?
No.
What is their hair doing?
Yeah, you need to do a separate watch just for hair.
Just a hair watch down.
they're all weird.
It's a big hairdo. All right, so those were all just repeated viewings and just burning episode time, getting some credit in. Because the other stuff I've got is a little shorter than you would prefer. I got 2 stand-up specials. One, Jenny Slate, brand new.
Great.
And funny, she does her bit the entire time. I don't know that she's got too many more characters than John Ralphio's sister.
Well, what do you mean, Marcel the Shell? She is a delight. I love
on
her so
camera
much.
characters.
Oh, I
Like,
see. Okay.
Voice
All right.
characters she can
Yeah,
do stuff, but when it's her, it's usually like, oh yeah, I think of you as John Ralphio's sister. Don't be suspicious.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be
Them
suspicious.
walking weirdly at a funeral.
She's so great. I love her so much.
The title wasn't something that I was going to like attach to, like, the cheeseburger or whatever the other stand-up specials. Yeah, it's a Jenny Slate, seasoned professional.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't really have a story to directly attach to that. It wasn't like, oh, there was a funny thing where she was in a kitchen and seasoned was, no, nothing about that at all. Just,
All right.
She did great. It was, I would have paid to see that live. $40 or $50.
Yeah,
all the way
I
at
love
the back
her.
and the top.
I do want to see her live. I got to investigate that.
And then
Yeah, right.
What? I would go out and see Jenny live.
You would.
I would.
Will you?
That's the real question. The answer is no. Okay, sorry. Go on.
And the other comedy special that I watched was Kevin James Thornton, Be Yourself. Primarily, I have some affinity for his TikTok bits. They're like 1-minute jokes so that you get the joke right across. He does a change to his voice, so it's like auto-tuned. And it's about when he was in his fundamentalist Christian church when he was a teenager. And I don't have like the same stories, but I was in like youth choir and some trips and stuff like that where we're on buses. I'm like, I kind of understand what's happening there. And he was, in a very Christian schooling environment, so him being homosexual really didn't come out of the closet back then in the 90s. And so some of his stories are like, I had friends that had similar situations and stories, and so I thought I'd check out his stand-up special, and I enjoyed it, so I recommend it. But again, not a whole lot of jokes, and again, be yourself. There wasn't a whole lot to attach to, like, oh yeah, I remember this big bit that he did. No, he just does his auto-tune thing and sings a weird little song every once in a while. It's pretty fun.
Well, what's funny is now that you mentioned the auto-tune thing, I know exactly who you're talking about because
Yep.
I know him from TikTok.
Yep.
He is hysterical, and it made me immediately think of, because what he does is he has his little mic and he's like,
Yeah.
and there's the bit where he gets a message in his all-male dorm or frat house or whatever from the bookstore where I think it was he wanted a book called like Am I Gay or something like that. And it's like, so I get a message on my machine that is broadcast to the whole house. Am I Gay is now available for you at the bookstore. I mean, like, all of his bits, very funny.
Yeah.
I did not realize he had a stand-up show, so I'm definitely going to check it out.
Check
He
it
is hilarious.
And the last thing that I brought to the podcast today was a new show. Well, not that new, last year, but I was holding off until the whole season to drop for Animal Control on Fox via Hulu. And that's with Joel McHale, and he's going full Joel McHale. He's a very funny, smart, crass type of grown-up amongst other grown-ups. And I do enjoy how most of The Office is not like the fan of his that I feel like people usually are. They're usually like a fan of his, like, oh yeah, no, he's the cool guy. He is definitely like working this job for too long, and everybody else has got their reasons why they've got this job. He seems like he should have been promoted. He shouldn't still be here. He is quite old to be doing just animal control. Everybody else feels like, oh, you're in your 30s, you haven't figured out your career. Oh, you're a dad. This is like the side gig job that you had to do to make, ends meet or something like that. So there's other characters for sure, but his character is like, well, you're here for the jokes, I think. I think that's what you're here for. Okay, fine, I'll sign on for that. And so I've only watched the first season. It's 12 episodes, and the second season just started, which is why I'm like, okay, now you're
ready.
You aren't just a one-off season, so that'll be disappointing if I really liked you and you're not coming back. You did come back. Great. I will watch more. And I am thoroughly enjoying the rest of the cast. The rest of the cast is filled out with Vela Lovell, which you probably wouldn't recognize her name, but you would know her from My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. She was like the office mate, best friend.
Oh, right.
And again, not that far off of that character because she's in another office with a whole bunch a cast around her, but she is kind of like the office misfit. She doesn't quite fit in with the rest of the office. And a surprise cast member, not one of the main cast of characters, actually supposedly fired, but somehow getting a lot of screen time, Kevin Bigley from Upload is in this. And he is a lot of fun, and he is not having to pretend that he's in a fantasy fiction digital world. He's in the full real world. So I think there's some developing things, and I'm hoping that he's back in season 2.
Nice. I love him on Upload.
It's one of those tough ones where you're like, this isn't just you. This seems like you. Is that your name? Because that's you.
Yeah.
But it's not.
He's super great.
And the last 2 cast shout-outs that I'm going to do are Michael Rowland and Ravi Patel. Weirdly, Ravi Patel's character is Amit Patel, so same last name. I'm not 100% sure why they did that, but that's fine. And they're also just part of the main cast. So, again, an enjoyable sitcom and not too big, 20-plus minute episodes, and only like 15 of them right now. So you could crack it open and lock it all in like a week.
Lovely. Question.
Yeah?
I feel like, is it somehow create what, John?
No, but ask your question because I'm sure I don't know where you're going.
What? Who produces this? Who created it?
It's not related to Parks and Rec.
It feels like it should be Parks and Rec.
It's
How
weirdly,
is it not related?
It feels like they took the animal control department from Parks and Rec, but then made the whole show the animal control department, but it's Parks and Rec. But it isn't. It's unrelated people.
It's more like Barks and Vet. Burn!
Wow.
I don't know if that worked.
It totally does, because there's vets.
Yeah.
They deal with a vet, the hot vet. And as far as it should be all of that, they're not doing the paperwork. It's not really the office. Like, no one's really in the office. They're all field agents. So they get out of the office environment quite often to set up and go for jokes and plot lines. They're very light plots.
It could be that just from the promo, that's what we think, Katherine.
Yeah, it feels like from the promo.
It's 100% that actual flavor. It's got the same like opening and theme song flavor, and it's very much The Office and Parks and Rec feeling. That's what they're aiming for.
Cool. Okay. John, what do you got?
Okay, sure. I got 2 things. One is a movie in the theaters you've totally heard a lot about, Snack Shack.
I don't know what Snack Shack is.
Yeah, exactly.
Please enlighten us.
So I was going to see a movie with a friend, and we didn't know, we hadn't made the plan yet. And then it was like, well, do you want to say this? And I was like, what are we? Sure. If you want to see it, sounds good. Yeah, it is kind of a teenage coming of age, comedy. It's actually rather hysterical. I think nails it very well. It's set in the 90s in Nebraska. So,
in Nebraska.
Yeah,
okay.
Interesting. Apparently the filmmaker, his name is Adam Reiheimer, grew up in Nebraska, has made a couple other independent films. I don't know how biographical it is, not sure. But it's fairly amazing. I mean, Nebraska is not something I thought I knew, but it was like, oh yeah, this is not exactly what I was thinking of Nebraska being. And it's based around a city pool type situation. And these 2 14-year-olds who are about to go into high school, and they are so ridiculous because they're kind of, they're definitely, they don't seem like, little kids. And they are entrepreneurs. At one point, I think they have 4 businesses going.
Love it.
It's it's not like I want to ruin it all, but like they're making beer and they're gambling and they're reselling things.
Those were not the businesses I was expecting.
Exactly. That's why I had to say them. At one point, the dad is like, "You should mow lawns," and there's this whole separate joke, and he's like, "I don't want to mow." It's like, yeah, that's not what these kids do.
No, that's not what they are up to at all.
Yeah, it's very enjoyable.
You should get a job with the Snack Shack. That's our cover job.
No, they were not into that. It was also, it was you gotta wonder. I wish I didn't immediately see the ties to real life when I looked this up. I'm sure it's out there, whether or not. But, they went and bid with the city on this. It was like, what's happening? Also, the city is going to take a bid from 14-year-olds? What's going on?
That's the 70s, man.
No, 90s. But a very similar feel. It's pre-internet.
Do they have beepers?
They don't use them, no.
How are there not more movies about beepers? Like, we need the beeper range of movies.
Definitely need, like, the rise and fall of the two-way pager. That is the next,
the
Amazon
next tech movie.
movie I'm gonna find
100%.
I don't know if anybody's making that for you right now. So you're definitely gonna almost recognize one of the leads from young Steven Spielberg in The Fabelmans.
Oh, right.
I didn't think of it because it's just it's been a whole year. And, just he's costumed and looked a little differently. And he's, gotten a little bit older. He's really playing a different type in this movie. That was kind of like a nice guy type a little bit. And then this was like, both the friends at one point are, slicker or more crass. But he usually is the more crass one. So a little different than he was in Fabelmans. Other than that, it's very fun. There's this older guy they're kind of looking up to. It's hard to tell. It seems like he went in the military, came back, but maybe hasn't gone to college yet. So whatever. He's not 25. The whole movie, I was like, why do I kind of recognize this guy? I'm not sure. And then I did eventually figure it out afterwards. I was like, it's the older brother from Jurassic World who's, always scamming on chicks. You're just looking at them. What do you think is going to happen? So the younger brother, really stole his thunder. But the older brother was still great. I didn't realize, because I still haven't seen Love, Simon, where he's the lead in that. Mm-hmm. And then also he's in the new, Millie Bobby Brown Damsel movie. So he's all over the place.
Oh, I totally forgot I saw that.
Oh, Elizabeth.
Maybe I'll review it next time we're together.
Sure.
Yeah, Damsel. Ooh, it does look creepy and good.
Yeah, I don't
like
know
a
if I'm ready
pivot
for
on
that.
a
fairy tale.
Yeah,
really you deduce that from.
Which,
it's literally exactly what the trailer is.
Come on.
I thought it was just fairy tale, no pivot, but what did I know? So anyway, he's very good in this. He's not, a main character, but he's in it a lot because they're looking up to him, and then he's also got them not a job because he's a lifeguard. But then that's part of how they're getting into finding out about the pool and whatever. Because this is, I'm sorry, I said a pool, so Snack Shack at the pool.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So he's quite good. The mom and dad are both very funny, but the mom, Jillian Vigman, you also saw this here in Holdovers. Two different versions of a not always a nice mom. This one was a little bit nicer, but it was quite funny. The mom is an auctioneer, so they even do that once in real life, like at the dinner table, like about what's happening, which was pretty fun. I enjoyed that. So look, you got to see it.
I'm interested.
I'm sure it'll be on streaming at some point, but at the moment, it's in the theaters.
Okay, John, have you done an interesting rewatch that you need to tell us about?
Look, I've decided not to give you what you want.
What? How dare you?
But it's somewhat, I feel like it falls in the category. Netflix knows me very well. There's a new movie, Code 8, Part 2.
Oh, I started to watch Code 8, Part 1.
I did see it and almost watched it because it's the Emil
Cousins?
I
Yes.
was going to say brothers. They are not brothers.
I
They're
know,
cousins.
sadly.
So
They
it's
should be
Robbie, Emil, and
Steven or
Steven.
Stefan. I don't know. They're Canadian. That's all I
yeah.
do
So
know.
he's the Arrow one. And then Robbie
is the upload one.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm intrigued because I almost cracked it open. But then I was like, 2 movies. I don't know if I have time for this.
Well, what you don't realize and why it's not a rewatch, but it's kind of like that in some ways, because there's these 2 movies, but there was also a short to begin with. And that's how it all kicked off. So the short is still available on YouTube. They put that out and they crowdfunded it. They originally, this was 2018.
They did it together?
They did it, yes.
So they're producers on it?
Yes, 2016, excuse me.
2016. Ooh, a long process.
Well, yeah, so the first movie came out 2019.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this movie, 2024. So, I mean, there's a real saga. But that short film, they redo that sequence. There's some slight differences, including, Steven or Stefan was not in that first one. He was supposed to be, but then he couldn't.
He was too busy with Arrow.
Maybe, I don't know. He did do a voice for, a tiny moment. But then the way that his character that he ends up being in the next two movies is not in that short. So it worked out in that way. But, it's a whole world that you just have to enter into, the Code 8 world. I've been meaning to bring it up forever because I had watched them when I figured this thing out. And I was like, wait, there's this movie and it's from a short. I was like, well, I have to talk about this. And then I waited so long, there was a second one.
Oh, wow. Really? Oh, okay.
Well,
I didn't realize that is what happened.
I don't know when I watched it, but it was not this year or last year or the year before. So
oh my gosh.
Who knows? But they're all very enjoyable. It's kind of like a light superhero type thing, but very real world, with some, scary other things added on top of it. A lot of drone, robot stuff that's, real bad. And
real bad. Uh-oh.
Taking advantage of it and stuff like that. So, yeah, you should watch all of it.
Okay, so the short is on YouTube.
Correct.
And then it's 1 and 2, and those are both on Netflix. And you need to watch the short, or you don't because it's redone kind of in the first movie?
If you are, interested in Hollywood and quote-unquote history.
The evolution of a project.
Oh,
okay, yeah.
If you just want to watch a movie, then no, you don't have to watch it.
Got it. But I would be interested in that first thing that it sounds like what they did is make it to pitch it as a bigger movie.
That was
very smart. Oh my God, I love that.
Same directors and writers on all of it. And yeah, that was the idea. Like, hey, we're putting this out there, the short 10-minute thing to then, crowd from the public. You give us money. And they got a lot of money, and they later sold it to Netflix. So yeah, you're also getting to see like, okay, well, what did things look like when they were doing it on their own, and then what did it look like when they, and there's also one of the guys is a visual effects type guy, so it all looked pretty great to begin with. So
nice,
very interesting.
Do you know if they got a Netflix deal for the second one, and therefore maybe not a crowd-funded size budget?
So they sold the first one to Netflix, and then yes, it was going to be Netflix from the beginning for the second one, but it wasn't like, and then we gave you $100 million. No, I don't think so.
All right.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. That was not exactly technically a rewatch, but I'll take it. I'll take it, John.
Oh.
Okay. So we can do a recap. I talked about Will Trent on ABC and then also available on Hulu, and also Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is an HBO show. So it's also available on Max.
Okay, and I watched Spaceman, which is available on Netflix, and All of Us Strangers, which is available on Hulu.
And I watched Jenny Slate's Seasoned Professional on Amazon Prime, also on Amazon Prime, Kevin James Thornton's Be Yourself, and I watched Animal Control on Fox.
Well, that was all your new stuff.
Yeah, I watched like 3 other previously recommended things. I'm not going to go over all that.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of like being reminded of all the things that you talked about, but you don't have to, I guess.
All right, then. So in the theater, I saw Snack Shack. And then on Netflix and YouTube, it's the Code 8 family of movies. Code 8, the short, Code 8, and Code 8 Part 2.
Okay. Wow. All right. It's funny when you said Code 8. I'm like, what word is that?
You're code-dating someone.
Code 8. But it also kind of sounded like Coda, that movie that was the initials.
I spoke
language.
perfectly. I don't know what you're talking about.
And it was perfect. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for this episode. And please follow us on all of our social media at Podcast Watching. And you can watch our video episodes on YouTube at the Knack Entertainment YouTube channel. So thank you for joining us on What We're Watching.